Ladies and gentlemen, happy Halloween! You are here listening to adults talk about cool stuff. This is ATACS, episode number 48, the Halloween edition. We're recording this October 27th, and I got some people here with me. We're going to talk about video games. First joining us is Mr. Nate from Parts Unknown. Hello, Nate. How are you?
The spookiest place to be from.
I would certainly agree with that, seeing as how we don't know where you are, or at least I don't know where you are, ever.
It's somewhere.
It's somewhere.
He could be right behind you.
He could be right behind you. And that spooky voice that you heard is Mr. Will from Greenville, North Carolina. Hello, Will. How are you?
I'm here.
Have you picked out your Halloween costume yet?
No.
All right. Well, you still have another 4 days, so you better get on that quick.
All right.
And Mr. Flex from Raleigh, North Carolina. Hello, Flex.
Nate is from Clayton, North Carolina, for the record.
Okay. That's also called Parts Unknown because no one knows where that actually is.
So now, when I disagree with him, I can find where he lives.
Uh-oh.
That sounds like a threat.
Be careful what you say, Nate.
And last but not least, Mr. Ryan from the big city of New York. Hello, Ryan. How are you?
I am good. I am also here.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about video games, also some other stuff, maybe some things. And I think today we're going to start with Mr. Nate. Mr. Nate, what's been going on in your neck of the woods?
I've been just, not really doing anything. I just figured I'd come on here and just kind of ramble on for like an hour or so.
I didn't know that you were doing your best Flex impression today.
Ow!
The truth hurts sometimes.
No, I've been playing some games. The main one that I'm bringing to the discussion today is the return of the Obra Dinn.
Okay.
And I know at least Flex has started it. I don't know if anyone else is aware of this game.
Yeah,
can you run that name by me again?
Return of the Obra Dinn.
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't played it or anything.
The latest from Lucas Pope of Papers, Please fame.
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting. I have not heard of this one.
This came out about a week and a half ago. It is the next game from the creator of Papers, Please, and it is a first-person adventure logic puzzle make Nate feel stupid game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the description.
That checks out so far from what I played.
All right.
Have you played Myst before?
I have played some of Myst before, but not the whole game.
Okay. Is it? I mean, that was kind of a.
It is sort of in that lineage. So I'll talk a little bit about the actually what you do in Obra Dinn. I'll try to say it a little more clearly. So that's the name of a ship. It's in the early 1800s, and you are an investigator for the East India Trading Company, and you are going to board the Obra Dinn, which has mysteriously returned from its voyage, and all the crew members are unaccounted for, and you are tasked with finding out what happened to all of them.
Okay.
So the whole game takes place on this ship in the Atlantic Ocean, and you have a crew manifest listing all the people that were on the ship, what their role was, like captain, first mate, top man, things like that, and where they're from. And along with that, and just a general sketch of all the people that were on the ship, you have to try to put together what happened to each of them, put names to faces, and what happened to them. And that is the overall goal of the game. But the way you do that is through some supernatural voodoo, because if you find a dead body, you can pull out your pocket watch with a big skull on it and relive their final moment. So the way that works is you walk up to their body and pull out your pocket watch, and then you are transported to whatever was happening the moment that they died. And it's like this really cool, still 3D environment that you still move around in like normal. So the game's fully 3D and it's first person, but it just puts you in this snapshot environment of what was happening when they died.
All right.
So basically you're exploring the ship and you move around, find bodies, try to piece together what happened, try to identify people. And like I said, it's a big logic puzzle. So there's like 50 or 60 people that you need to identify and figure out what their fate was. And it's pretty neat. I like it.
All right. That certainly sounds like a pretty neat mechanic with like seeing that last little bit.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some screenshots and the graphics look kind of wild too.
Yeah, so the other thing that's really worth talking about is how this game looks. It's fantastic. It is just like it's like a 1-bit color depth.
Mm-hmm.
So there's every pixel is either black or white, and they use that to really great effect. So you can get sort of effects of grayscale by mixing different densities of black and white pixels, but the whole game is done in that 1-bit color depth, and it just makes some of the scenes are really striking. Pretty much every scene you get when you investigate a dead body and see their final moments is like this really meticulously laid out, like orchestrated, well crafted snapshot of action, and the voice acting's really good. Even though there's not a ton of it, you'll usually get a couple snippets of dialogue with each scene.
Right.
And also just generally the sound design is amazing. Like the little musical cues that happen when you solve something is like really satisfying.
Yeah, this game's got style.
It does have style.
Yeah, both visually and audibly, it makes a really strong impression.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of looking at it, and there's bits and pieces that like remind me of like old school like CGA DOS graphics. And then and then you kind of combine that with like some of this like super high res stuff where they're making the like a bigger scene, and that's just a really cool like going from one to the other.
Yeah.
They actually have some. I wish I had written them down, but there are different visual styles you can change between in the options, and most of them are based on different like old computers.
Yeah, like the default one is just called Macintosh.
Yeah.
And there's like a Commodore one. I don't know all the other ones either, but
they all look pretty striking.
Yeah,
it seems pretty cool.
It is really neat. Like I said, it makes me feel stupid a lot. I finally finished it off earlier today, so I solved every mystery in the game.
Okay.
Yeah,
but it definitely took a long time for me to piece some of those pieces together, especially towards the end. A lot of guesswork, which I felt like you're not supposed to do guesswork, but I ended up having to do some.
So the like help menus in your book, one of them says straight up like, hey, you're going to have to, I don't know if it uses the word guesswork, but it's basically like you're going to have to intuit and deduce some things on your own. Like it's not going to be pure logic.
Yeah, well, I think it's not. I guess it depends on what you mean by like. I think you can make some reaches based on a couple like pieces of like context clues about like, oh, this is where this person is always on the ship. They're near this one cabin that is probably theirs, and that cabin is specific to a specific person, and that might help you. Or like, oh, they look like they're this nationality, which can get you into trouble if you're like, oh, this person looks Asian, and then they end up not being.
Yeah. Which I when I was playing it earlier today, I started having this thought of like, man, like they're probably really going to bank on me like having knowledge of what certain nationalities look or sound like, aren't they?
There's definitely some of that, yeah.
And when you like what certain ship roles entail.
Yes, definitely. And you do have to start trying to piece that together. And it does give you a glossary of terms for like the different roles on the ship. So that helped me categorize some people like, oh, these people are all top men because they're out like up dealing with the sales in this one scene. So I could just like tag them as top men and then figure out the specific person later.
Top men.
That's what they're called, top men.
Yeah, that's an official term.
So yeah, it's like there are so many variables that it feels overwhelming. And you really have to like try to focus in on the variables that you think are most important for that specific person that you're trying to figure out. And try to put it together and be like, this is probably the most likely answer, so I'm going to put that for now. And then when you figure out 3 people, it will tell you that you have 3 correct and like seal them so you can't change them anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there any penalty for getting them wrong?
No, the only penalty that I could say for that is that I just ended up confusing myself by like
right, because I'm guessing they don't
stuff wrong.
Or you have wrong.
No, they'll never tell you it's wrong. The only way you would know is if you had one set that you thought was correct, and then you figured out 3 others, and it seals those 3, but you didn't get the other one. Then it's that's obvious. Something's wrong here.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so there's no penalty for just guessing.
No, there is no penalty.
Right. Other than, like you said, confusing yourself.
Yeah, you just get really confused. So I got to the point where I had like I said, it's like somewhere in the 50 to 60 people range. And I got to the point where I had figured out like 35 of them or something like that. Like probably like 36, somewhere around that range.
I figured out 3.
Yeah.
No, 4.
Okay. And then I was just like, I don't know. These 4 are top men. Let me just assign them all random top men and shuffle them around until something clicks.
Right.
That actually ended up working in that specific instance. Probably not the way you're supposed to do it, though.
Yeah,
sure.
Probably. Yeah. So sometimes sometimes you can infer stuff pretty clearly. Like I heard someone speaking in a Scottish accent, so
yes,
he's probably one of the 2 Scottish people on the roster. Things like that. But are there ever something I'm kind of worried about, and I have a feeling the answer to this yes is. Are there visual details in the scene, like props around that need to be used to identify people, which would require me to go back and watch, like jump back into all of those scenes again?
So I definitely replayed through probably every scene 2 or 3 times before I figured out everything.
Right.
At least. It's not necessarily because there were like little items that I felt like I needed. I just going through them all once, you're kind of focused on the larger action and like the main person that died in that scene. But you really need to figure out everybody in that scene, like everything about them that you can.
Yeah, like the first 10 or so scenes I watched, I was just really focused on the person who died and what happened to them. And I didn't pay attention to the other details in the scene. And now I'm feeling like, oh, I probably need to go back and look at them all again and take notes on who was doing what and all this stuff. Yep.
That would be the way to solve everything, pretty much.
All right.
I don't think there's any problem with going through it the first time, just focusing on the victim, because that will help you sort of fill out those easier ones, which then makes the process of elimination easier for later. But yeah, you will need to pay attention to more details that are happening elsewhere in the scene. Like, and even sometimes you'll be like, the main scene is up on the main deck, but you could go down one deck in some scenes and like see other people doing stuff downstairs.
That sounds exhausting.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah. It sounds, from what you're saying, it sounds like you focus mostly on the people in the scenes. Are there ever props in the scenes that you have to pay attention to like be like, oh, this is like a bucket, so this person may be like scrubbing decks, so that helps me identify their role? Or like, is there any like objects in the scenes that are kind of important for identifying people?
I can't think of any times when I used like just some mundane object in the scene to help identify somebody.
Okay.
I don't think it gets quite that granular. There may be clues there. Like, I think this game has so many layers that like it is just like everything is information, and maybe there are clues there that I just didn't pay attention to. But
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it's like, part of me kind of wishes that like all the information, like when you saw a scene, all the information would somehow get put in your book, so you wouldn't have to go back and rewatch the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And they do put who else was in the scene.
Yeah, they put a lot of information, but not 100%.
Yeah, the one I really wish you could get is when you clicked on the part in the book that shows you the dialogue for the scene. I wish you could just play it back right then, because voices and accents are clearly information.
Yes.
And that's something that as far as I know, you can't re-listen to without just watching this, like going back in and out of the scene over and over again.
Yeah, I kind of wish that once you had seen every scene once, they just let you jump between the scenes from the book.
Yeah.
But you have to keep walking around the ship finding the bodies again.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a frustrating thing, but
yeah, it's a little tedious.
But yeah, overall I did really like it. I think hunting for those little details is mostly fun. The most frustrating ones that'll probably be frustrating to you too, if I had to guess, are the ones where there is a scene where there's a main person who dies and you found their body, and that's how you see the scene. Yeah. But then there are actually other people dying in that scene or right around it that aren't identified as victims in the book, and you just have to kind of extrapolate what happened to them from that scene.
Are those like the missing persons?
Some of them are the missing persons, and some... Actually, yeah, I guess they are probably all under the missing persons
and that's
page.
Going to be really confusing.
Yeah, it can get confusing.
Because for the most part, the book does a good stuff at keeping things, a good job at keeping stuff organized. But
which we haven't really even talked about the book yet. It's probably the most papers, please thing about this game.
Yeah, I mean, this book is like, in some ways, is the game.
Yeah, it's just this huge book you can flip through that keeps a record of everything as you're going through. But anyway.
Yeah, I wish there was some less tedium around the edges, but I do really like the puzzly nature of it. So did you have a lot of I've watched, the events that happen on the boat are broken up into chapters.
Yep.
And ironically, it kind of starts you at the later chapters. So the last stuff that happened chronologically.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw all the scenes for the chapter called The Doom.
That's a fun one.
Yeah.
The Doom. All right. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And I could only identify one of the people.
Yeah.
And, but the pictures, when I say I mean just me as a player, and maybe this is me being dumb, but I could only identify one of them. But the game has a mechanic where faces are blurry if you haven't encountered the information to identify them yet, but then they're clear if, in theory, you've encountered, if the game thinks you have the knowledge to identify them.
Which is basically which scenes have you seen at that point. So, there are certain scenes that after you watch them, some different people's faces will become clear, meaning that you could figure out who they are.
Yeah, and I have 2 or 3 of those that are clear, and I have no idea how to figure out who they are.
So I went through all... When I got to the point where I had seen all the scenes, I don't know the exact number, but I probably only had maybe 20 people that I had actually figured out. But they're all clear at that point. Once you've seen all the scenes, they're all clear. Yeah.
So my question for you is do you think it'd be worth me right now, now that I've only seen 10 or so scenes, would it be better to go ahead and try and nail down the ones that are clear, whose pictures are clear now before I have more scenes? So but basically that lets me know that okay, within these scenes, I should in theory be able to figure it out. Or could I potentially get more clues from watching more scenes?
I think you could probably get more clues, because I tried to do that at the start. I was at the point you're at where I had seen that chapter, and there's a lot of characters in that chapter.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm going to just stop here and try to figure out some of these guys that it says I can, and I couldn't.
Right.
So I just ended up moving on and figured them out later. Because most of the characters, because that's a later chapter in the book, so most of those characters are going to be in other stuff that you see in earlier chapters.
Yeah, that's true.
That will help.
And I have a couple of people that I've narrowed down to 50-50s, but
yeah.
Like the Scottish person is one of them. It's like he's got a Scottish accent. There are 2 Scottish men on this boat. It's one of them.
Yep.
50-50 chance.
Yep.
But you have to find 2 other people that you're like confident that you have them correct, and then just flip the Scottish guy back between the 2 Scottish people and see which one takes, because it'll seal them once you get to 3.
Oh boy. Yeah, and I guess in theory you could get down to some process of elimination stuff late game.
Yes. Yeah, late game is definitely a lot of process of elimination for me, at least.
Yeah. Because I know I have another person. I think it's one of the. Oh, what are the? I forget the technical term for them, but there's 3 or 4 of them on the boat, and I've narrowed it down to one of the 2.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I imagine all process of elimination is the way you get that final step.
The other quick tips that I can give you that it took me a while to figure out for some reason is that if you are looking at the dialogue in the book from a scene, the person who died in that scene
is marked with an X.
Is marked with an X, which it took me forever to figure that out for some reason.
I just figured that out right before I stopped playing.
And then the other thing is the sketch of showing everyone on the ship is actually super helpful for figuring out certain groups, because people of the same role tend to be standing together in that image and things like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't pay enough attention to that, where people were standing in that sketch early on.
Right.
But anyway, that's probably enough about Obra Dinn, but it's a cool game. I like it.
Yeah, it's a cool game, and I think I like his game design. He's able to somehow take these jobs that on the surface seem like they would not make for good video games. Like in Papers, Please, you were a border control person.
Yeah.
And in this game, you're what, kind of tax insurance collector or something?
You're like an insurance investigator.
Yeah, and it's you would never think on paper that those would make good video game roles. But he finds a way.
I'm pretty sure that I would never think that those 2 would be fun.
But he finds a way to make them into fun games.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Sorry, last comment. The view people at their death mechanic. And Will's played this game. Kind of reminds me of cryostasis in a way.
And you're on a boat,
exploring a boat and seeing people at the moment of their death. But I think the game focuses. I think it focuses more on that mechanic and kind of makes it more about that and using that as puzzle element,
right?
Which is pretty neat for an investigation type thing.
I also read something about Ghost Trick or something. Had something like that. I never played Ghost Trick, but
yeah, I did play Ghost Trick.
But I don't know.
I think Ghost Trick. Yeah, I had my memory's fuzzy on that one, but
right.
Yeah, so this is only out on it looks like PC and Mac right now. I don't have. Do you guys have any idea if it's supposed to come to any of the other platforms?
I don't know, actually.
I don't know what Papers, Please came to. I would guess probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to play this, you're just going to have to pretty much get it off Steam, it looks like. Which, whatever. So,
Papers, Please apparently did come to iOS and Vita.
I did not know it went to Vita. That's kind of an interesting one.
So expect Return of the Obra Dinn on Vita.
All right. Vita's been needing some new games, right?
I could see this being on iOS, but yeah, I wouldn't expect this on consoles.
Yeah.
Maybe Switch.
Maybe Switch. It seems like
Switch is basically the new Vita.
Right. Yeah, that's very true.
It's successful.
Yeah, that's really funny.
It's the Vita if it's sold.
It's the Vita if it's sold well.
It's basically if you took the Vita, put a Zelda on it, and then that causes people to buy it.
There are some Nintendo people somewhere that are just bawling their eyes out right now. At that,
I mean, what is the difference between the Switch and the Vita? The Switch has Nintendo properties on it.
I suppose so. All right. So, anything else about the return of Obra Dinn?
Well, I think that's it. I overall like the game a good bit. I probably respect its craft more than I personally like it, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's really interesting so far.
All right. Well, Nate, have you been playing anything else, or has the return of Obra Dinn been taking up all of your time?
That's the main thing. I'll do a couple quick things here, but I don't want to spend too long on them. So I did do the first episode of Life is Strange 2. Overall, thought that was a very strong but weirdly long episode. I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering how long the first game's episodes were, but it was probably almost 3 hours long.
Did they release the I guess the first episode?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I guess that was pretty recently because I know it had been.
Yeah,
on
a few weeks.
Okay, cool.
I don't remember the exact day, but yeah, it's been out for a couple weeks at least.
And then I guess since it's episodic, it will probably take some time to see the next few.
Yeah, I don't know if they have a date on anymore after this yet. Probably not. But it's a good. It's both like a good introduction to a new storyline and new characters, and also kind of works as its own standalone thing. Like, if I didn't play any more of Life is Strange 2, then it would be totally fine.
Gotcha.
Which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
But yeah, I like the
Does
setup.
it use
I like those
anything
characters.
from that Captain Spirit? Does that tie in at all?
No, I don't. No, I don't think I remember anything
Weird.
being tied. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the role of that Captain Spirit free standalone thing was. Maybe it will come up later.
Yeah, I felt like I heard some chatter that it was supposed to be a prequel, but I could be totally misremembering that.
I mean, unless I've just completely forgotten some key details about the Captain Spirit episode, then there's nothing from that in this. I don't think there's anything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia entry right now, but it's going to be too hard for me to suss out.
It's
so.
possible it could tie in later.
It could definitely tie in later. And there's like a nod to the first season of Life is Strange, but that's it.
Okay.
It is very much its own thing, and I like the setup and the characters so far. I think the two brothers are a pretty good pair, a pretty good start to a new story. But like I said, it's kind of almost like its own standalone movie adventure game in a way. Like it definitely didn't just end, but like I would be totally fine with not playing any more of it. And you can buy the first episode standalone, obviously. So like if you're interested in more Life is Strange or didn't play the first one but are interested, then like you could probably play the first episode and then decide later if you wanted to play more, because I think it works by itself.
Right.
That's kind of the whole idea of that.
Yeah.
I had read a couple things about this game, and some folks were saying, like, as a contrast to some of the other games that had come out, that it seemed like would touch on topics but maybe not dig into it. It was saying that this game was very, I guess, upfront about its politics.
Oh yes, it's very upfront about its politics. If you want to run into some very clear, even if they don't quite say the name, they basically do everything but say Trump. Some very clear Trump supporters in this game who are really bad people. And yeah, that's definitely a part of this game.
So they're definitely using this game to get some of statements out there. I guess maybe the best way to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I was playing this using a Steam Link on our TV, and my wife was watching, and she was like, "Wow, I'm surprised they would go this far." Like anyone who is a Trump supporter would probably be really offended by this game.
Oh, really? So it's not even like it's I guess subtle. It's just more. Yeah,
it's just like, hey,
just louder.
This is our worldview. Here it is.
Okay. Well, I mean, plenty of artists.
The developer's French too, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Which is extra funny.
Yeah.
Are they really? Because I mean,
I'm not sure.
Pretty sure. I can look this up.
We will fact check, but I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like that, it's not the first time that artists have used their medium to sort of put their opinions out there about like just whatever the relevant topic is.
Yeah.
You can find that as an example all through history, but that is kind of one of those where if it's a very loud opinion, then that they do risk turning off portions of a potential audience there, which, as expensive as game development can be, that's just not something that you really see a whole lot of. So yeah, that's just kind of interesting.
It is interesting and maybe a little surprising, but I mean, for me, it works.
I kind of feel like, if you are particularly sharp about whatever it is, it's like it seems like maybe the people who are turned off will be turned off, but then it seems like the people who it does resonate for, it could kind of hit them a little bit harder, and they might even become a little bit more attached to it. And I guess to me, the context of this conversation is with stuff like, like Wolfenstein 2, the new Wolfenstein 2, or even BioShock Infinite, where this idea that like we're gonna touch on social topics, or a better example might be the one that that Nate and I played, Mankind Divided.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people felt like it was kind of trying to. It was marketed in a way that made it seem a lot more political than it actually was.
But it doesn't really ever go there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that was why this one was kind of noteworthy for a lot of, I guess, like journalists, is that it was kind of just, it's like, we're going to go here and we're going to really do it.
Yeah, they really do. And like, it's on so much more of a personal level than any of those other examples that you brought up as like ones that don't quite go there. Like, okay, I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything here, but like the two main brothers are Hispanic teenagers. Well, I guess one's not probably quite a teenager yet, but the older one that you play as.
And they're MS-13 members, I bet, huh?
Sure, yeah, of course. But you meet this real shithead at one point in the game who literally utters the words to you, "This is why we need to build that wall."
So wow, it's that obvious. Like there's absolutely no doubt that the developers of this game were trying to push that particular message.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
And like I said, I think it works, but it probably will turn off some people.
Yeah, no, and I mean that's just kind of interesting to because I don't know how much that I've personally have seen that in any of the games that I play, even going back like to when there were other like relevant topics to whatever that particular time period was, because we're all old now, and I've been playing games for a while, and I can't think of anything that I've played that's been that overt. At least nothing off the top of my head. So that's just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So okay.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with more episodes of that. But so far, I'm pretty impressed with what they've done. The writing's also really strong, of course.
It's a big year for Don't Nod. They've had Vampire, Captain Spirit, and this. Yeah,
and I liked all of those. So.
And I did confirm they are French.
Nice.
Fact check complete. That's the beauty of recording this on computers, where we can have access to Google while we are talking.
Real time.
In real time. Pretty much every game anyone starts talking about, I have to go Google while they're talking, because I know nothing. But anyway, so did you say that you had something else that you wanted to touch on, Nate?
In the interest of time, I'll gloss over it, but I started Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Okay.
I think that game starts poorly, and
all right.
It seems to be getting a little bit better as I get into it, but it's mostly what you expect. But I don't think the start is strong at all.
All right. Well, hopefully it does get at least a little bit better. And,
it's getting there. I've been enjoying more the last hour or two I've played.
I guess just real quick, like what makes it not strong? If there is a quick answer to that.
Well, I think it's a lot of things, but it's definitely the feeling of like, oh, this is definitely just like more of the same. But then also like, I think in terms of the narrative setting for this game, like I basically went back and forth between being confused and like everything just falling very flat for the first little bit. Even though it tries to start with like big bombastic stuff, I was just like, okay, I don't really understand what's going on here, or like the action's really underwhelming, things like that. So it just didn't it felt like it was trying to start with a big bang and just kind of didn't.
Right.
Sure thing.
Right. And this is made by a different developer from the
Montreal,
previous two Tomb Raiders, right?
Yeah, Montreal sounds right.
Where Crystal Dynamics, I think, did the previous two.
Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, I would, if we were going to do a deeper dive into this, I would definitely start with like, I like those first two games. I don't think this is necessarily a worse game, but I think a lot of factors kind of swell up around it to make it a more underwhelming game.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess just keep on plugging away at it, and we'll get a bigger report at the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, I've got Will coming up next, but before he goes, Will, I just wanted to let you know that I did finish Welcome to Bummertown. So that was something that I said I was going to play at the last ATACS. I played it. I finished it this morning.
Were there any chuckles?
There were several chuckles. There were several screenshots that I took and posted. I really liked the humor of the game. I think that they did do a good job of sort of like kind of threading that needle between breaking the fourth wall, but then doing it tastelessly. Like I think that they did a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, I hear you, young blood.
Yeah, that was great. That boxer dude was wonderful. And I mean, really, I guess I've only got like one real complaint. Is by the time that I got to the end of the game, once you get through what seems to be the majority of the puzzles, you get to this spot at the very, very end after you go through a teleporter, and those last like 3 or 4 puzzles just made absolutely zero sense to me. Thank goodness someone on the internet had actually played this game other than me and you, and had some walkthrough type material there, because the combinations for the last few doors, you're supposed to be getting these clues from like the ambient environment, and I don't know, maybe just I'm not wired that way, but I wasn't catching any of that, and I'm wondering if you had any similar issues.
I had a big problem with one of them, and I think it was like the one that had like the 307 on the wall or whatever.
Yeah, that one.
That one, because I was like, those look like letters, and then I had to make the leap. First of all, I'm like, well, do those letters kind of resemble numbers? And then what do those arrows mean? And it took me a minute. It definitely took me a minute. And actually, it's funny, in my little review of the game, I like put a little tidbit at the bottom where I basically said, if you're playing this game, remember that maybe letters can look like numbers, because I didn't want anyone else to go through the same pain that I did.
Yeah. That one got me, and then there's another one after that where there are these like talking faces. You have to like talk to faces. And I just like after I've went and cheated basically and looked up what I was supposed to do, because I wanted to finish this game up before the episode today. Yeah. Like, even after I looked up what to do, it's like I don't know that I would have ever gotten to that logical spot. So I don't know.
That one I was able to kind of piece together, but it really does go off the rails in the last part of the game.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome to Bummertown complete. I think it was a pretty fun little experience. I think it was about a 2 or 2.5 hour game. So any longer than that probably wouldn't have been good. But for that length, I think it was perfectly fine. So just wanted to update you on that before you got into your stuff. So, but I know you've been playing things. So what's been going on in your neck of the woods?
What makes you think I've been playing video games?
Well, because you're here to talk about video games on...
I don't think Will ever plays video games.
Video games?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some video games that you play that maybe don't quite pass as video games, but...
Ouch! God-awful clicker.
Hey, I wasn't even going to talk about that, but that's an amazing game. All those numbers are going up so fast right now.
So the things... I play the games. So I played. I finished up Sherlock Holmes, Crimes
Okay.
and Punishments, which I think I mentioned last time at the tail end of our last episode is a thing I was working on.
Mhm.
And because it's kind of divided into the 6 cases, it's not really the type of thing that you sort of just sit down and like blow through. You kind of play it sort of case by case. And you also don't want all the information to run through your head and run, kind of run together in your head, because there's a lot of details in each case. But I guess first of all, one thing I'd be interested in hearing from the panel, if they're interested in providing some feedback, is if they have any experience with any of the popular conceptions of Sherlock. Like, have you read any Sir Arthur Conan Doyle stories, or have you seen the BBC one, or Elementary, or the Robert Downey Jr. movies?
Yeah, I saw the first Robert Downey Jr. movie. I've watched almost all of the BBC Sherlock except for the last series.
Okay.
And I have read a couple of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle stories.
Okay.
My entire exposure to Sherlock Holmes is I read Hound of the Baskervilles.
Okay.
That's a good
when
one.
I was in middle school, which I remember almost nothing about.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I really don't think I've really experienced too much Sherlock Holmes. I'm pretty sure I've seen that first Robert Downey Jr. movie, but I couldn't tell you anything about it other than he like fights people at one point.
Gotcha. So, and I guess, and I don't know if Ryan had a comment on that, but I suppose that it's kind of interesting just to think about what you think about when you think about Sherlock, because I guess my main exposure has actually been with the modern one. I've seen both of the movies. I haven't actually seen the BBC show. I've seen like 5 seasons of Elementary, though, so the modern day one with Johnny Lee Miller in it.
Right.
And I really like the conception of Sherlock in this. Like, the voice actor is very much like very kind of stoic and almost kind of always a little bit sarcastic. So people will say things like, "I can't believe you figured that out. You're just as brilliant as they say." And then Sherlock is like, "Certainly." Whatever like that. It's just great. And so, and he does all kinds of really interesting sort of Sherlock-y shit, So one of the things you can do is, like, whenever you meet a new person, like either if it's a witness or, someone who has been victimized in some way, shape, or form, you can hit this button and then kind of scroll through their appearance. And as you kind of scroll through the appearance, you can move the stick around and kind of highlight these different areas. So, you might move it over and it'll highlight the type of fabric that their clothes are made out of, or maybe that they do or don't have a ring on their finger, like if they're married, or like if they have some dirt, like maybe some sort of like mud on the bottom of their jeans. And then those things, of course, go into your kind of notebook as clues, but you can also get different conversational options based off of them. So that's kind of a pretty cool thing, because I've seen, like, Sherlock in the different popular conceptions do that sort of thing. Like, he'll say something really crazy about it, like, you had wine last night, and they're like, "Well, how do you know that?" And it's like, "Well, you have a purple stain on your finger," or something crazy like that. So, so he does that type of thing. There's also these sort of little, he's got a little lab back at 221B Baker Street, or wherever it is. I can't remember exactly his little address, but he's got like a little lab. And so you take chemicals back there, or metals, and do your kind of analysis. And some of your analysis is like interesting and creative, kind of like the way you've seen it happen in different kinds of other popular conceptions. Like, there was one point where there was a train, you thought a train was coming, and then, later on, you kind of figure out that maybe it wasn't a train. So you try and kind of recreate the appearance of a train using this little hand cart. And so you like hang a little lantern on it, and you have a train whistle attached to it to try and do it. And there's another part where you're trying to figure out exactly how much force it would take to impale a man with a harpoon. And so you go to a butcher shop, and there's this pig carcass, and you're trying to like harpoon it. So, and it just, I guess I did mention this a little last time, but this is Sherlock Holmes, Crimes and Punishments that I'm talking about. Sorry, I just kind of hopped right in. So that's sort of an interesting aspect of it. That's very, Sherlock Holmesy. You've also got like some archives that you use. So maybe you'll see a symbol, or maybe you'll hear about some band of thieves or something, and you have to go back and dig through like these encyclopedias or newspapers to try and figure out like where you might have heard that before. And then of course there are interrogations. So when you've got evidence and interrogations that you're going to have in the police station. So you'll go to Scotland Yard or whatever, and you'll look through like whatever the suspect had on them when they came. And then of course you can go and question them. And you've got these little question parts where if they're lying to you and you have a piece of evidence that's contradictory, you can sort of call their attention to that and kind of interrupt their statement in a way.
Mm-hmm. Objection.
Yeah, kind of. So then there's also this sort of Sherlock vision that you have. So of course you can notice like the regular clues that are just kind of in plain sight. But then if you I was playing with a 360 controller. If you hit the right button, it'll kind of like overlay everything in this sort of kind of yellow tone. And then it'll highlight things with bright yellow that you might have missed, like, maybe like a scrape on the floor, or, something that's kind of been embedded in the wall or something like that. And outside of the fact that some of the little extra pieces that you do on the outside, so like you might find these pieces of, one of the parts that is I found these pieces that you could use to forge a sword, and it was some sort of really complicated puzzle to put them together. And that I found that kind of tedious. And some of the little mini game things, like when you're actually testing the harpoon to see if you can impale it through a pig, there's like a little gameplay section. And it's kind of the only time in the game that you really do anything like that gameplay section. Like you're not trying to throw harpoons at any other time in the game.
Right.
And so like, it's like all of those little extra pieces, they vary in quality. So some of them are definitely not going to be as high quality as the other ones. In terms of outside of the main game, which is just sort of traveling around, looking for evidence, that sort of thing.
Right.
So those are the only parts that I didn't like about it. But one cool thing about it is there's actually like a skip button. So if you try it for a while and you're like, oh, this is lame, I don't,
Right.
like, it doesn't make you feel like Sherlock, but you can just skip it and then it'll just kind of like get you to where you need to go. So like especially if it's something like, you have the evidence. You're just trying to figure out if like the metal you have is the same type of silver, and there's some sort of reaction you need to create using these chemicals on your desk, and you keep trying it and failing over and over again. You can just skip it and it'll be like, okay, this type of silver is blank,
Right.
So that's kind of like a nice way of just sort of avoiding some of the tedium.
Right.
But I thought the cases themselves were like super interesting. Like, one of them that I thought was the most interesting actually was there were these two groups of there was like a group of Chileans and a group of Mexicans who were both trying to bid for this coal mine. They both wanted to buy this coal mine in the United States, or not in the United States, but somewhere in London or somewhere in that area. And one group of them actually finds a way to redirect the railway and either kind of push them into make the railway actually take them into like a lake
Okay.
while they're on a train, or make it take them into this cave and then blow up the side of the cave so they're trapped in the tunnel. And so I was like, man, that was dirty, guys.
Yeah, geez Louise.
But of course, you can go over there and you find like this cart of like railroad materials and you're like, wow, is this here?
Who put this here?
And as you're playing, there are different ways that you can kind of go. It seems like each one has like multiple different people that you can end up thinking is guilty, and multiple different ways that they might have done whatever it is.
Right.
And so it was interesting because as I played through it, I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, well, of course, this is the answer. And of course, this is the answer. And then at the very end of the game, I went back and there's like a little summary page. And I realized that I got the person wrong in one of them and I got the method wrong in the other one. And so there were actually 2 out of the 6 that I actually didn't get, even though I felt like I was really kind of piecing it together as well as I could. So some of them are a little bit devious like that.
That sounds neat.
So the last thing I want to say about it is it plays with this crimes and punishments idea. So whenever you actually decide who's guilty, you actually choose like what you want to do with them, like whether or not you kind of want to pardon them or give them a light sentence, or whether or not you want to like throw the book at them, so to speak.
Right.
And the interesting thing is that the game takes place in like 1895. So I found myself thinking a lot about like what do I think about this? So there was one guy that I said was guilty who was insane, or he seemed insane.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's interesting because like in modern day, I feel like we have better ways of treating different kinds of mental illnesses. So I
Mhm.
might be more likely to send this person for treatment. Whereas just knowing what mental health was like in 1895, I'm like,
Right.
are we really going to be able to do much with this guy? And there's also a case that involves domestic violence. And so it's like 1895. At that point, women were seen more as like men's property. So if she had, if this particular woman, instead of, something happening to the husband in the death department, could she have sought, help through the legal system? Or does it
Right.
matter how intense the violence was, or, if he could actually end up, killing her? And so I found that kind of to be an interesting aspect of it, is trying to decide, what you think. And so, for instance, like if one person witnessed another person committing murder, and then later on that person died, the person who committed the murder, but no one else knew that it happened. It's like, I don't know, I'm not explaining this correctly, but basically this idea that sort of one investigator can kind of choose the punishment is kind of, I don't know. At first I thought it was a little gimmicky and goofy, but then it kind of grew on me as I played.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it also sounds like that you're having to go through a couple of different, like, like logical leaps where you're like, okay, well, this is what I would do in the modern day, but this isn't the modern day. This is 1895. So
Right.
You're having to take into account what sort of the culture and norms were from back then, and that's something that's just an additional layer of like thoughtfulness that maybe you wouldn't think about otherwise.
Yeah. So I thought it was a good time. But yeah, I liked it. I've been a little bit tempted to pick up the next one. It's called like The Devil's Daughter, but
Mhm.
it didn't review as well as Crime and Punishments. So I'm just not really sure. Well, I guess we'll see if I get in the groove, get in the mood for some more, for some more sleuthing, I guess you'd say, then maybe I'll end up picking up The Devil's Daughter. But I also heard that there was a lot more action segments that were kind of included.
Right.
And so it was almost like some of the action segments were kind of some of the weaker parts of this game. And so if they actually doubled down on that, I could see how some people might find that a little bit tedious.
Yeah, I
Because
could see that.
the developer is called like Frogwares. I think they might exist in this weird space between AA and like AAA or Indian AAA or something.
Okay.
And so they're not, I don't think that they're particularly capable of like designing these like really, really elegant, smooth gameplay systems. And so it's sort of, they can be a little janky.
Sure.
They
I
put all
understand.
their money into the voice acting.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. So,
But yeah, I don't know if anyone really cares about that, but that's that's the thing I played.
no, that sounds pretty neat. I really like and I guess I'm thinking back to the BBC's version of modern day Sherlock, where he also had the detective vision kind of thing, and
Right.
they did a really good job of showing that in the series. So that sounds like it'd be kind of neat to see here.
Oh yeah, seeing what he's noticing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so I don't know if anyone doesn't have anything else, I'll kind of move on to another thing.
Yeah, what you got?
I've rocked. So it's a game, and Ryan and I toyed with playing this a lot, but it seemed like the price was never quite right, and we never quite had a third. But I ended up picking up and starting For the King,
Okay.
which is like it's sort of like a kind of a co-op board game-esque roguelike situation. It's kind of takes place on like a hex grid, and you have a party of 3 people, and you're kind of moving around to these different events and cities and quests and bandit camps and random encounters on the
Co-op roguelike board game. That's not a combination I was expecting to hear.
Yeah, so and then the combat is sort of goes into the turn-based kind of situation, and each weapon kind of has its own attacks, and there are different classes that you can kind of pick. I think by default there might be 3 or 4 classes, and then as you play through the game a couple times, you unlock while you're playing, you unlock this sort of lore currency that you can spend outside the game to kind of add more character classes in.
Okay.
And that makes it almost sound like it's like a free to play or something, but there's no extra like monetary. I mean, after you buy the game, you have the whole game. It's just you have to kind of play through to earn this separate currency to earn the other characters. And I'm not 100% sure what the logic of that is, I guess, but I guess maybe some of those characters are a little more specialized, you know, so maybe some of the mechanics of them. One of them is like an herbalist. So one of the interesting mechanics in the game actually is that your healing item is like this little, it's this like plant called God's Beard. And basically that's always the same. You always find God's Beard. But then you, and the way you use it is you have this pipe that you like, I guess, smoke it in.
Okay.
And there are like 4 or 5 different plants that do different things. So some of them up your focus, which is sort of like a one-time use resource that you can use to kind of empower attacks. Some of them up your speed. Some of them give you resistances and things like that. But those items are always the same. But as you upgrade your pipe, you get better and better effects from them. Okay. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So by upgrading your pipe, it makes basically all your consumables better, which I think is a kind of neat idea because I'm used to sort of games doing it the other way, where it's like you keep finding. So you might find minor healing potion, and then you find great healing potion, you know, and then you find super healing potion. But in this one, it's like the herb is always the same. It's just basically, I guess, how good your pipe is, which I thought was kind of neat. And then we had this sort of situation where one of us was the one who was upgrading their pipe a lot, and they had a party heal skill. So they could actually use it, and so we could kind of focus on them, getting them the dankest pipe.
The dankest of pipes.
Yeah, and then sort of having them heal everybody else.
How dank is your pipe, Will?
I actually, if you were to ask the people I'm playing this with, not nearly dank enough because I don't focus on it. I like over rely on my partners to heal me because I'm like, yeah, you know, you're the guy. You're the healer guy.
You're the healer guy.
You know? So either way, it's kind of tough. It's a kind of tough game before you kind of get the hang of it. And it's really kind of hard to talk about. I mean, you've got this sort of overarching structure where it might say your basic goal right now is to make it over to this island and clear out this dungeon. But the game kind of expects you to just sort of be doing random stuff along the way. So stopping by, you know, taking out random bandit camps, accepting quests, little side quests from the different towns, you know, maybe buying new equipment at the towns or, you know, whatever. So there's, and then of course, as a roguelike, there are all kinds of ways you can screw yourself over or get screwed. So we just went out in the ocean and there's a random chance while you're riding around your boat that a kraken will show up.
Oh boy.
and one time a kraken showed up and just like, we were really low level at that point and he just like broke our boat in half and we all sunk and that was like the end of the run, you know? So it's like, there's not really any, you can save, but basically it's like if you die, the game erases your save, which I guess is sort of like a roguelike kind of situation. But it's got a lot of systems in it, but they're pretty well explained. There's a really good in-game tutorial and they all fit together really well. So, I mean, basically I would say to anybody, I mean, if you like turn-based RPGs and you like doing things in co-op, there's a pretty good chance you'll like it. Like, I mean, there's not a lot of real reservations, there. I mean, the first time was a little brutal because it had taken us about 9 hours to get to the final kind of boss. And then we lost on like the fight before the final boss. And then that was just it for that run.
Right.
And depending on who you are, you might be like, well, you know, we learned a lot, but I was like, 9 hours. Hold it back. But it's really a cool thing. So I think it was on Steph's wish list on Steam or something. But you know, if you guys are looking for like a co-op turn-based RPG, I think it's a winner.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was a fun thing. Otherwise, I mean, I've already kind of ran my mouth a lot. Other things that I think would be interesting, just to kind of touch on right quick, is been playing a decent amount of Soulcalibur VI.
All right. How have you been enjoying that?
How does your soul burn?
It's pretty good. It's weird because like some of the things they've added, I'm not a huge fan of. But I think some of it will just take some getting used to. Like in the previous game, you had soul charges and you had special moves that you could do once you've done the soul charge, and then you also had kind of your guard impacts, and those were some of the more kind of specialized techniques you could do. And I guess when I say the other game, I mean Soulcalibur 2. That was the one I played.
Have you played any other ones?
I played a little bit of. I think I've played a tiny bit of like all of them, but like none of them really stuck, And some of them I probably didn't buy. Some of them I might have like, done a GameStop rental,
Right.
I'll get it and then take it back within 7 days just to see what it is. But
Right.
I was trying. I did pick this one up, on release and had it delivered and everything. So trying to kind of stick with it. The critical edge thing. So you've now got like a little special meter that happens in the game. And that was not really present in the last Soulcalibur I played. And once you kind of earn a bar of it, you can do what they call like a critical edge move. And it's really, really easy to execute. Hit R2 on your controller. And if the opponent is not blocking, then you do this sort of like Marvel versus Capcom looking thing where like the camera goes all around and there's all these, it's very different than what I'm used to from Soulcalibur. And it takes off about a third of your opponent's health bar.
Okay.
And so that can be a little brutal, just because that's not a really high bar for entry, like just them not blocking. And we found ways like if you knock someone up in the air and then kind of do it as they're falling, or if you just guard impact a move, they're sitting there and their guard's kind of penetrated. And then you've basically got to hit one button to get rid of 1/3 of their health bar. And so I guess maybe it's there for some of the folks who find like the real crazy cinematic action blaster moves kind of entertaining, and they want that sort of thing in their game.
So yeah, like I just want to jump in real quick. Like, Steph and I have been playing a little bit of Dragon Ball Fighter Z. And there's totally that exact same thing of I'm going to push one button and get this big cinematic, which I don't deserve at all, by the way. I just push the button. God, that is so satisfying. So that sounds like it's made for me. Just so you know.
And I think that kind of stuff has become more common in fighting games recently. Like I know the recent Street Fighters have had big flashy moves like that. I'm pretty sure like the Injustice games have had that. So like, I think that's just become a more staple of fighting games, is to have these meters that build up and then execute a really flashy cinematic move.
Right.
Yeah, I like the way that Street Fighter 4 handled that system. You had those meters, and I think this was true of Street Fighter 3 or Alpha or Next Strike or whatever as well. So it's been around for a while, but they give you like EX meters, and you can invest those into like a more powerful version of a regular move. Like you could trade a bar of that for like a more a powered up like Shoryuken.
Right.
But if you let it get high enough, then you can try to do, and in Street Fighter 4, they're not like trivial to execute, like mostly.
Right.
They're at least as hard as the regular moves. And if you whiff, you have a long recovery. So.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't probably have as much of a problem with these if they were a little bit harder to execute. But and the other new mechanic is what they call reversal edge. So now it's sort of like a specialized sort of. So some of the characters in the last game would be able to they'd have these things where they put their weapons out, and then if you hit them at that time, it was almost like you baited them into a certain move.
Okay.
So it's more like preparing a parry as opposed to using an offensive attack. And that's kind of what the reversal edges are. They involve this kind of red color, and you hit the reversal edge button and you sit there and your weapon turns red. And if they attack you when you have the weapon out, when you have your red weapon out in the reversal edge stance, you go into this little showdown where you guys are both kind of standing a certain distance apart. And I don't know the rules on it 100%, but it kind of resembles like a rock, paper, scissors match. So if like one of you hits horizontal and the other one hits like kick, it's like the kick guy will win or something like that. And then it's like the vertical and the horizontal and the kick. And then of course you can also kind of dodge or block. And so there's just some sort of system there. And those seem to have a little bit of a potential for abuse, a little bit, just because I was playing a couple of matches last night, and the guy I was playing against just reversal edged over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of really broke the flow of the whole situation. But
yeah, I've heard really mixed reviews on that mechanic, and what you just said is probably the most common thing I've heard, is that it breaks the flow of the fights.
Right. So that's kind of most of what I've been taking from it. I mean, they've got a couple new guys I haven't seen before. The Geralt is really good. Geralt's a baller. There's a new guy named Grow. He might have been in a previous game, but I've never seen him before. He's got this sort of weapon. He's kind of like a cyborg. He can break the weapon in half into two swords, and he's pretty quick and pretty strong. Then the new guy is Azrael, who kind of reminds me of a combination of like Raiden from Mortal Kombat and like Necrid. And that he's always like using his like different colored magic to create these weapons. And he's also really good. I mean, all the newcomers are good. And then the ones who have always been losers are still kind of losers. In terms
how's Voldo?
He is different.
Can he still air hunt people?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, he does that.
Good.
You know what I mean? If you get that off, he's got to pop people up in the air with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's plenty of custom character creation centered around that, so you should Google that sometime.
Gosh. Yeah, have you made Goku in your game yet?
I haven't made any custom characters.
Have you made Gritty in your game yet?
I kind of hated them in the first game I played them, and I think they're probably not quite as bad now, because as far as I know, they have to mostly adhere to another character's moveset. But I remembered in Soulcalibur, I think it was 3, there were it seemed like when you created a character, you could kind of give him like an odd mix of moves. And I never really liked that, because then when you played online, you never really knew what you were kind of up against. Like if you play like a Voldo, like against a Voldo, you're like, well, I'm gonna have to worry about this, and that. But then if you play against some random combination of moves some dude put together, sometimes it just doesn't feel as high tech, I guess. And I guess I mean tech in like the fighting game kind of sense, maybe. But anyway, so I've been having a pretty good time with it, but I'm just not really sure. I wouldn't just as soon play more Soulcalibur 2 if it was like ported to PS4. Like, I'm not sure. I mean, some of the new characters are neat, and I'd like to learn them, but like the new mechanics, like Reversal Edge and Critical Edge, I'm just not really sold on them 100% yet.
Right.
But yeah. But yeah, I'll shut up now. I think that's plenty of chatting. And,
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like I've seen more just stuff on the internet about Soulcalibur 6 than some of the other ones. So this feels like that, because for me, and I think you too will, Soulcalibur 2 was the thing that I sunk the most time into. And then it seemed like as time went on, 3, 4, and 5 got less and less popular, but there's been a bit of a resurgence, at least it seems like, with 6.
Yeah, we'll see. I think I was reading an article the other day that was talking about how, some of the mechanics led to some interesting matches in the last professional tournament that I was playing. And some of the big fighting game players, like that guy Sonic Fox, who seems to be popular in a lot of different ways. He was playing Soulcalibur at this last tournament, but they said that Soulcalibur V, they maybe had like just a handful of tournaments, and then it just sort of fell out of competitive play. And so I guess we'll see if this one has more legs, so to speak.
That we will. So, All right. Well, thank you for the Soulcalibur report.
Yeah, man.
Mr. Flex, I understand you've been busy recently, but have you had play any video games?
In the past, I don't know, 20 hours, I've played some games. Been pretty busy before then, but this weekend's a gaming weekend, so.
What you got?
I put a handful more hours into Forza Horizon 4.
All right. Do you have the fastest car?
Well, oh gosh, what's that thing called? I'll put something in the chat here in a couple minutes. There's a really hilarious car that I got that is not the fastest car, but it is the fastest car.
Okay.
I'm sure I don't have the actual fastest car, but I have a lot of cars. I probably have like 50 cars. I don't know.
That's a lot of cars.
There are a lot of cars in this game.
That seems expensive. It's a lot of oil changes.
Yeah.
But the real question is, how did each car die?
Usually running into a tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or getting run off the road by your stupid drive-atar.
My drive-atar is the best. Don't even try.
Every time I'm trying to make a turn, I'm getting bumped off the road, like bumped out of the way of the checkpoint by someone, and I look over and it's got your name above it.
That's excellent.
I'm like, great.
Doing his job.
Thanks.
I just have this picture of him like with his window down and like a pair of sunglasses on, and he just like turns and gives you like a grin and a thumbs up while he's going by.
They actually don't let you. I mean, this has always been a thing with like Forza games, is you can't really wreck the cars.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They like, you can be driving at 150 miles per hour and like run straight into a house, and there's like a barely noticeable dent in the front.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, that's realistic. That's what would happen if you ran into a house at that speed. But yeah, it's a good game. I like it more the more I play it.
Okay.
It is very much more Forza Horizon. Like what I said last time is still 100% true. But it's a really well made one of those. And I think the more I play it, the more I get exposed to the quote unquote live game parts of it. And it just makes sense for Forza Horizon. Like,
so sorry, a quick question. How many hours have you put into it so far, if you had to guess?
That's a good question. I don't really know. I would guess maybe in the ballpark of 15-ish hours.
So, and if you had to guess, at least for you, how long of legs does this game have? Like, if you put in 15, do you see yourself putting in another 15, 30, 40? I mean, how interested are you in continuing with what you've been doing?
Yeah, I'm if I had to guess, I'm probably winding my time down with it.
Okay.
It's really one of those games that like you play as much or as little as you want. Like, for me, playing more of this game would be just doing more of it. Like, I've basically had access to almost everything in the game at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like there's progression or whatever that I'm working through. It's just like keep doing more events, like do more online stuff, like do more of the seasonal. So there's weekly events, there's stuff based on the seasons. So like it's just constantly like rotating through events that you can do. Basically.
Sure.
So the legs on this would be, if I want to play more of it, there's always going to be more of it to play. Like it's basically like Forza Horizon 4 is a giant playground that is never going to run out of content. Like that's what that game is.
Okay.
Which I think is a really cool way to go for that. There are a couple, I mean, there is progression in the sense that like all the event types you like level up in individually. So like last night I finished off the off-road races, which were my favorite races. So I like leveled up to level 10, and that like as you do them, you basically get experience towards that event type. And then there's like a special event at the end that's like just a bigger, longer, harder off-road race.
Mm-hmm.
So like that kind of caps off the off-road race line, if you will. But then there are also like career, and there's like half a dozen of those, and then there's the stunts, and I mean there's all sorts of stuff in this game. But there are also these I think they call them careers. So one of them is like you're doing stunts for a movie. One of them's like, I don't know, like some organized race league or something. But like there's kind of like a very, very slight narrative tying these together.
Mm-hmm.
But one of them, when I hit level 40, that unlocked is the setup of this is there's a streamer who wants to showcase their 10 favorite cars from racing games in video game history.
Oh boy, I've heard a little bit about this. I don't know how spoilery you want to get, but I'm ready.
Yeah. So all of these careers have 10 different stages to them. So in this one, it's called LA Gamer. That's the name of the streamer.
Perfect.
And yeah, you run through 10 different races where you drive a car from another racing game. And what's crazy is like they say the name of the game like by name. So I assume they like got some kind of rights to this. And when you get into it, it's really cool. They'll like actually play music from that game, and this streamer is like your narrator, and they'll like say phrases from that game. Like so they basically act as like the announcer from that game. So they'll, you know, if it's from a Sega game, they have a voice like this.
Okay.
Like they really imitate like those other games, which is pretty neat. So yeah, I thought that was a lot of those games I hadn't actually played, but it was still like a really neat little, like it was a neat series of races that they had in there.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah. I can read off the list of games. I don't know if anyone cares to guess any of them.
I mean, I'd love to guess, but I really can't even start. So
Yeah, I mean, I would have only been able to guess like 2 or 3 of these at best. Someone in the chat says Crazy Taxi. That is definitely one of them.
yes.
Nice.
So from 10 down to 1, it was Outrun, Smuggler's Run. So some of these are like old Atari games.
Okay.
Outrun, Smuggler's Run, Test Drive, Project Gotham Racing, Daytona, Crazy Taxi, Sega Rally, Super Off-Road, Ridge Racer, which they totally did the Ridge Racer.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
And then the number 1 wasn't actually from a specific game. It was some Porsche, but they were basically like, this is our favorite car that's in every racing game. So it was a little bit of a cop-out at number 1, but but yeah, that was a fun little series of events.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just, I don't really have too much more to say about it, but yeah, it's just a very, like, the strength of that game is it is a giant playground that you could endlessly play in, like, forever.
Gotcha.
It looks great, it feels great to play, like, it is just a well-made, well-produced game.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've been hearing a lot of chatter about that one, so I'm definitely glad that you're enjoying your time with it.
Yeah, and the season stuff is cool. Like, I mean, if nothing else, it's just like that game's visually really good looking.
Right.
And the seasons really shake that up and add to that.
Okay. All right. Well, is there anything else that you've been able to sink any time into?
The only other thing I have to talk about is I had totally forgotten that this was coming out, but the second season of the Castlevania Netflix series dropped yesterday, and between last night and this morning, I watched the entirety of that season.
Wow, how many episodes is it?
It's 8 episodes, so it's
That's not that bad.
twice as long as season 1, but they're like 25-minute episodes.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the first season was really short. Or I guess it felt that way.
It was pretty short, I think, yeah.
Yeah, the first season was around an hour and a half-ish in total.
Okay,
And this is twice that. So it probably took me about 3 hours.
Yeah, and, props to Netflix. They dropped Castlevania, and they also dropped Seven Deadly Sins Season 2 recently, which was an original anime for them. So they've been...
Voltron.
Yeah, and Voltron, that's right. So they've been doing some work on that front.
Yeah, but I really like that Castlevania show. It's kind of dumb in ways, but I think it's entertaining.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, they did maybe lean a little heavily into some fan service with like Alucard particularly, I think, but they also captured some of those Castlevania 3 things and made Trevor, I guess, kind of like a bit of an edgy character.
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't call Alucard fan service. He's just a character in the games. So, like, It makes sense that he's in there if they're basing it off the story of the game.
Well, I mean, he first shows up with what? Like, he steps out of a coffin with his shirt off. And they didn't keep his Castlevania 3 look. They updated it to his Symphony look. I would say that's a bit fan servicey.
I guess so. I don't know. So in the second season, they started bringing in a whole bunch of characters that I was not familiar with. So apparently this leans into, oh gosh, it's like one of the PS2 3D Castlevanias.
Nice.
It's like apparently one of those games followed up the Castlevania 3 storyline. So they lean into that, which is kind of wild.
Really?
Yeah. So the first let me actually pull this up so I get the game right. It's Curse of Darkness.
Wait, and this was a PS2 one you said? I'm not familiar with those.
I think so.
Okay.
If someone can look up when Castlevania Curse of Darkness was, but like the entire so who watched the season 1? I know Nate did.
I did.
Yeah, I did too.
So you know how that whole season was basically establishing Trevor, Sypha, Alucard, and Dracula as characters. It was basically like, all right, let's set up these 4 characters.
Yes.
Like the first 3 or 4 episodes of this season basically sets up a half a dozen or so of like Dracula's lieutenants.
Dracula's lieutenants. Okay.
Yeah. So it goes down this whole, it like spends a lot of time like setting up these characters that are serving Dracula. And how the season ends really heavily suggests that like, all right, these characters are going to be really important villains going forward.
Right.
So by the end of the season, there's a whole lot of characters going on that I was not familiar with because I don't play any of the 3D Castlevania games.
Right.
But yeah, it's pretty neat. And then those first couple episodes I thought were a little slow moving because I'm like, I don't know exactly what kind of role these characters are going to play. And I think it worked out in the end, but in the beginning it was a little bit of question marks. But man, the back couple episodes of the season, like they really go for it. There's some really cool scenes.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I really like the back half of the season. And there was definitely a moment where like they get in the castle, our protagonists get in the castle and are fighting things, and there's just like this orchestrated version of Bloody Tears playing in the background, and you're just like, all right, this might be a little fan servicey, but I'm all right with this.
Yeah.
I am okay with this fan service.
Yeah, this is A-okay by me.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's entertaining. If anyone if you like the first season at all, I would definitely watch the second season. It's good.
Yeah, I definitely plan to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely on my my to watch list because I feel like that I pretty much watched Seven Deadly Sins season 1 and then the season 1 of Castlevania pretty close to each other, and now the season 2s for both of those have come out, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. But I guess now, since we're talking about anime, is as good of a time as any to drop in the Dragon Ball Z Kai update very quickly. Steph and I have been continuing our adventures through the world of Dragon Ball, and we are almost through with the Buu saga, so we're actually almost done.
Okay.
And we've gotten to the point now to where there's variations of Buu that you find as they go through that saga. We are at the last incarnation of Buu. He is very angry, and he is destroying many things. He's destroyed planets, and that seems problematic. But I think that there are 163 episodes of DBZ Kai, and we watched episode 157 last night. So we should be finished with Dragon Ball Z Kai here in the relatively near future. And then we're probably going to take a bit of a Dragon Ball break.
I was going to ask, are you going to watch Super now?
Well, we are planning on watching Super, but we're probably going to let it kind of lay off for at least a few weeks because there are plenty of other things that have come out, like Seven Deadly Sins. We both really enjoy that, and the Castlevania thing. I'm sure that I'll watch that one. Mm-hmm. But it's been a pretty wild and entertaining trip through the world of Dragon Ball Z, and it's kind of interesting being close to done with it because it always felt like this, impenetrable, impossibly large sort of thing, and it probably was before they released the Kai edits, but yeah, we've gotten through it pretty quick, and now that we're near the end, it's like, okay, well, what else do I do with my life? So
watch
yeah,
watch all of Dragon Ball.
I remember
Is that the one where Goku has a monkey tail?
Uh-huh.
I think I might watch that.
Probably.
I don't even want to know how many episodes of that there are. I guess it may not be as long as it
might
might not be as long as Uncut Dragon Ball Z, because that show went on forever.
Yeah, the original Dragon Ball, I don't know how long it is, but I don't think it's that long. Which someone somewhere is going to correct me about that, but I feel like it's only a couple of seasons. But
yeah, I don't think Super is incredibly long either, but I don't know that for sure.
I think it's like 5 or 6 seasons in. And it may be continuing.
Yeah, I think it's still coming out. At least the website that we go to watch the Dragon Ball Z Kai episodes, it's probably legal. And then there's a little counter on the side of the website that says when the next episode of Super is going to drop. So I think that they're still coming out with those. But I don't know if the entire series is done in Japan or not.
Yeah, I think Super has officially wrapped up, even if other versions are still coming out. But
yeah,
you guys want some hot stats?
I'm ready for hot stats.
All right, Dragon Ball has 153 episodes.
That's not bad.
Dragon Ball Z has 291 episodes. This is the original.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball GT, I have no idea what that is.
That's not canon anymore.
Okay, well, that had 64 episodes.
That was the original post Z.
Yeah, it was originally supposed to follow Z, but it was so terrible it got canceled and taken out of canon.
That's really funny.
They basically tried to go back to the original Dragon Ball, right?
I don't know. I never watched it. I just know people didn't like it.
We have comments in the chat saying it was garbage.
Yes.
It looks like Dragon Ball Z Kai has around 69 episodes.
It's in 2 chunks.
If I'm reading this right. Oh, okay. I'm not going to comment on that. Super has 131 episodes.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
There's your hot stats.
Yeah. So yeah, we're definitely going to take a little bit of a break. But we're going to get back into that at some point or the other. So
nice.
And I guess the last thing, real quick, before I throw it over to Ryan, is Steph found a new clicker game for us to play, and she's been badgering me to say something about it in ATACS. I don't have much to say about this game called God Awful Clicker. What I will say is there are approximately 47 different systems and stats and points for you to spend your imaginary internet points on, and you're a gladiator moving through what is ostensibly a lot of Greek mythology, and I don't really know if there's a story behind this. You're called Gladiator, and you're murdering everything, including all the gods. So it has a little bit of a God of War vibe there. Yeah. And there is microtransactions.
Boy, go click that.
Exactly. Boy, click that dog. But there's just systems within systems. And one of the neat things is there's apparently only 16 people in the world that play this game. And they all know each other in the little chat. So whenever you log into the game, there's just this entire community of people who, I mean, of course, we don't know any of them, but they're just like, hey, how are your kids doing? And it's like, I'm not sure where to spend this point. And it's like, oh, you should do this. And by the way, how's your dad? And it's just like really wholesome in a way that you don't see in general internet chats. So I don't know what that's about, but I feel like I'm sort of stumbled onto a private game that maybe I shouldn't be here. But it's just fun to have running in the background, like most clickers that I do. So anyway, there's my clicker minute. I'm sure everyone has many questions.
There's probably a Dragon Ball clicker, right?
Oh, there has to be.
I'm gonna go look for that.
I have a question.
If not, the internet has seriously failed us.
Yeah, I feel like that has to exist.
I have a question.
All right, what's up, Ron?
Did the numbers go up?
Dude, there are so many numbers and they're all going up all the time. And as soon as you get done making one number go up, there's a whole other number that you can make go up. So you just circle through things back and forth.
Okay. It sounds like a clicker.
It's very much a clicker.
More important than is there a Dragon Ball clicker, is there a Puff Puff clicker?
You know, I'm not even going to Google that because that's probably going to take me to some illicit website.
Yeah,
You don't want that in your browser
you might not
history.
get a video game reference if you look up stuff like that.
Yeah, that seems like this is like a great vehicle for malware. So we're going to leave that one alone. But,
Directing our users to the right place.
So Ryan, please save us from where we have gone, which is a place I never intended. Please tell us about something that is a little bit more than clickers and puff puff.
So, I recently finished Dragon Quest XI.
Gosh
boy.
damn it, Ryan! You were supposed
I was
to
working
help.
on the segue.
I wasn't originally going to start with that, but
Seems like a
but
good
yeah.
place to go.
I was setting you up.
Yeah, actually, I think on our last podcast, I was maybe about 60 hours in, and kind of moving into what is considered, I guess, technically the post game. I think that's what it's called, that segment of the game. But yeah, I just passed 60 hours, and so I think my final time was around 92 or 93.
Okay.
I just knocked out the final boss and kind of wrapped up what I wanted to do yesterday, and that was fairly completionist.
Okay.
I didn't do 100% of everything, but I did a lot of side quests, and I got all my characters like a really decked out set of gear for that point of the game, and so on. Oh, sorry, I'm getting mildly distracted.
Just ignore the chat. It's fine.
But yeah, so I guess that sort of quote unquote post game section is where I feel like it wasn't quite as story heavy maybe, but it it's where they opened up the systems, like the crafting and the leveling and skill trees and things like that, a lot more, as you know, a lot of JRPGs are wont to do. Like they give you some space to kind of go down those rabbit holes, and that was a good time. I mean, I enjoyed it overall. I do feel like, and it has some kind of neat references and nods to the series as a whole, but I do feel like there were maybe some pacing issues. And I had talked about this, I think, on the last podcast a bit, in that I don't know if I had mentioned this specifically or not, but basically, like, I found that some of the systems were maybe a little thin throughout the main game. Like I liked the forging system, and I thought it was kind of neat, and you can like craft new gear and upgrade gear using the forging system. But throughout a lot of the game, like, it seemed like, I would get these materials to craft a new weapon, but then I wouldn't have like the right recipe to craft it, and I would just end up buying a new item from the store. And it felt like, to me, with some of that kind of content, they fleshed it out in sort of towards the very end of the game. But I kind of wish maybe they had moved a chunk of the post game into sort of more of the quote unquote main game or main story or whatever. And so it wouldn't have felt quite as thin.
Right.
At least in terms of gameplay. So and I think, I think I had mentioned one thing. I may not have mentioned that specifically in the last podcast, but one thing I did mention was maybe that, like, I might have preferred for them to fill out the sort of the main game, and I guess for it to have felt like, okay, you played 60, 70 hours, like this is kind of a complete package, and you like, we have this extra 10, 20 hours of content for you to poke these systems a little bit more if you want to, but it almost felt like the post game was sort of its own full section of the story, and maybe even fuller than the other parts of the game in a way. So,
that's interesting.
So, I mean, it was still a good time. It was exploring the combat and the skill trees and all that stuff, but
right.
I think they might have made that stuff a tad thin in the main game.
I felt that way a lot with a lot of recent Nintendo, well, I shouldn't say recent, like in the past decade, Nintendo games, especially Mario games, like where I feel like the quote unquote main path to getting credits is a little thin, and then they unlock like the cool stuff post credits. Like if you think of all the cool Mario bonus levels and stuff after the credits, it's like, all right, that's the good stuff. And it sounds like maybe some of that here as well, where like the most interesting stuff is kind of at the end.
Right.
Yeah, in terms of gameplay, like in terms of story, I don't feel like it's that way, and maybe that's part of the reason why I felt a bit of a disconnect, because, and maybe they just wanted to make some of that core story path a little bit more easy, but yeah, it definitely felt like there was a big chunk of gameplay and like systems development that they just kind of stuck in that, in that back third of my playtime.
And that, at least for me, has been frustrating of like, I know there's good stuff back here, but I have to like go through the lighter, less interesting stuff first. And with the Dragon Quest game being as long as it is, like, did that get old at a certain point where you like halfway through the game being like, I wish this would be a little more interesting, or was the story enough to carry you through?
Yeah, the story was pretty good, and I was actually kind of surprised whenever it transitioned into post-game, because that was a part, like, what kind of happened for me is, as I was playing along, I was like, oh, cool, you got these skill trees, you got this crafting systems, like, I'm going to spend time, like, stealing items from monsters and, like, collecting, they have materials kind of laying out on the world map, and it's like, okay, I'm going to spend some time doing this, and maybe I'll get some some new recipes to craft some new gear. And then it's like towards the mid game, I was like, man, I feel like I'm kind of wasting my time collecting this stuff, because I'll steal an interesting new material from a monster, and then I'll never find a recipe that uses it. The best way to get the next level of gear, sometimes, I would find a recipe and be able to craft some new stuff, but a lot of times it was just like, okay, well, the next tier of like two-handed sword is in the shop. So instead of investing in materials, I can just buy it from the shop for, GP or whatever, and then like go rework it. And that ended up, they kind of changed in the post game, there was a lot less of that. Like they fleshed out those systems more, but I did find during the main path, like you could stick to the shops and really be like, they didn't really reward you for engaging with that system nearly as much, or at least not the main crafting part of it. It was more about, I guess, just keeping your stuff upgraded.
That's interesting. That they would have it set up kind of in that way to where, I don't know, just to have it where you've got the system that you want to engage with, but then actually don't worry about it here. Just go to the shop and just buy your new thing. It's like, well, why set up the crafting for the mid game then?
Yeah, that was kind of, and I mean, maybe other people have different experience, but that was kind of the way I felt about it. With all the different weapon types and those systems, it felt like there were times, especially during the main story, where it's like, well, really, we just want you to go from here to here, and we'll give you a shop along the way, and like just buy the next thing you need. There were definitely times where it felt like that, and it's like, it's like, could have maybe fleshed this out a bit.
So I have one remaining question about this game. First first, I guess, would you agree that like this is a very by the numbers Dragon Quest game?
Yeah, I would say so.
That's what I heard from reviews and stuff. So
yeah, I would say so.
For
better and for worse.
Yeah, well, that was
mostly for
question.
better. Mostly for the better.
Is it more for better or for worse? Like, do you think that still plays in 2018 to have like a very old school, sticking to the, following the Dragon Quest formula that closely, like in 2018? Do you think that still plays? Like, is that still a good enough formula? Do you think that works now?
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, for the most part, I had a good time, and I would say, I talked about it last time a bit, that there are parts of that, feel a little obtuse or grindy or whatever. Like I almost completely stayed away from like casino mini games and stuff like that, because that stuff just bores me to tears.
Right.
And I stayed away from some of the scavenger hunts and things like that, but overall, it's a good time, and I thought they did a good job with the story. That was a little better than I expected. I was expecting, something fairly bland and straightforward, but I think they did a little better with that than I had expected at time. I mean, it kind of is what it is. Like, so, I'm not gonna sell it too hard, like that, unless you just have an itch to play like a really polished old school 90-hour JRPG.
Yeah,
and I mean, fair. old school. I don't know. It's a tough connotation, because they've definitely modernized plenty of things, like to make it fun and accessible, and maybe that's where it still works. But as far as a lot of it still feels very Dragon Quest. Like they lean into the references, they lean into the, some of the, like the side stuff that you might find in like a classic JRPG,
right?
Sort of in the way that Dragon Quest VIII did. But they've made some smart updates as well, like with Dragon Quest VIII, there are a lot of sections where you can just, if you don't want to fight monsters, like maybe you've done your grinding somewhere else, you can just like run around them, and sprint to the next objective or whatever.
Right.
So, I like stuff like that. That kind of, it's like, okay, well, I've done my share of grinding because I was looking for something. I want to just progress the story now. I'm going to skip a bunch of these fights.
Right.
So
just sort of move on to the next thing, because here they've got the enemies are on the world map, kind of like a Chrono Cross, right? So you can just avoid any of the encounters that you want to.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, so now that you're done, that's quite a chunk of time. So I guess now you can similar to me with all the Dragon Ball Z, you can go off and do other things. Have you already figured out what new hobby you're going to take up? Maybe woodworking or blacksmithing?
I haven't yet. No. I guess I haven't found that that sort of purpose.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we could all, back when I finished up Persona 5, which is probably the longest RPG that I played, I just sort of sat down and went, all right, now what?
Yep.
So, best of luck to figuring out what your new life's going to be.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about a game like that, because I did have a really good time overall, and there are a lot of high points and parts of it that I liked. But at the same time, as far as recommending it, I'm really hesitant to do that, because I guess with any 100-hour game, it's like, it's like, well, I think you would like this game if you had like 2 months of free time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. This is a game that I will probably not play primarily because of the length, but if this came out when I was in like, I don't know, middle school or high school or whatever, like it looks like a good game that I would enjoy playing.
Yeah, I think so. So
that sounds neat.
So yeah, there's that. And I guess the other thing I was going to mention is that I did, over the past couple weeks, step back into the Breach.
All right.
And I think this has mostly been since our last podcast. I may have been just dipping my toes last time we talked, but whenever I had played earlier this year, because I know I've talked about this a while ago, I'd done normal runs with 4 of the squads. So I think I had beat the game on normal with the Riftwalkers, the Steel Judoka, the Zenith Guard, and the Blitzkrieg. So in the past couple of weeks, I hopped back in and played the other 4 squads. And I found that the hazardous mechs are hot garbage.
They're great.
They're terrible. I mean, I guess
good.
if you like dropping objectives and not getting like island completion bonuses, then they might be the squad for you. But
if you like dealing so much damage and blowing bugs up, they're great.
I put them in the Blitzkrieg tier. But
I put them in the amazing tier. They're great.
The other 3 squads were pretty fun. I enjoyed burning everything with the flame behemoths.
The hazardous mechs, you can kill something and kill yourself at the same time, and then be brought back to life.
That sounds pretty cool.
Great.
That sounds complicated.
I don't see the advantage.
Be like, I have 1 health. I'm going to do 4 damage to this thing and 2 to myself, but then I will revive with 1 health again.
That always irked me because it's like you deal 2 damage to the monster and 1 to yourself, or you play the Riftwalkers and you just punch the monster for 2 damage.
Well, the Riftwalkers are pretty much just unstoppable, but
or you play the Frozen Titans and you just Spartan Shield the monster for 2 damage. Like, ugh. Yeah.
I don't know what any of those things mean.
These are all good. all of the squads are great except for Blitzkrieg.
That's funny. So how much how far into the Breach are you, Ryan? Are you do you see yourself playing this for quite a while, or are you just gonna kind of duck in, do a couple of games, and then move on?
I was debating on it. I mean, there's definitely a wrap achievements and playing the game on hard and things like that some of our panelists might be familiar with. But I don't think I'm going to go that far. I think I might try doing a random, I spun up a random squad game and played a little bit of it, and I think I might try to finish a random squad and a custom squad game. But that would be like 1 or 2 more squad playthroughs.
My favorite custom squad run is I completed a run with triple ice mech.
Like, the science,
the one from the Titans, the one that just freezes them.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It was great. Just one shot everything.
I kind of like that mech but I always had issues. That mech was actually always my Achilles heel on like Island 3 or 4.
Yeah. Well, we won't get into the nitty gritty of these mech, but you can do some really crazy custom squads in that game.
There you go. We'll just do a spoiler cast, and you guys can talk about all that stuff.
I was about to go down a rabbit hole.
How much of it did you play, Nate? I know you played some.
Yeah, I played with 3 or 4 of the squads.
Okay.
Did you enjoy going back to it, Ryan, and like seeing the other squads? Because I do think they all have their own flavor.
Yeah, I mean, other than the hazardous mechs,
they're so good.
It's funny because I think I actually started with that squad, and I mean, I experienced this when I first played through the game. And I mean, it's like this with FTL a little bit as well. Like each ship or each squad has a sort of a different play style, and how much that clicks with you or you enjoy it, I guess will definitely affect. And I think I may have started with the hazardous mechs, which was so frustrating. I almost like jumped off the game. In my first playthrough, I think the first game or 2 I played with the Steel Judoka, it also drove me crazy. until I kind of adjusted to how those mechs are supposed to be played. Like sometimes that's kind of neat the way that you can tell with this. I mean, and it was similar with FTL. I felt like, because I played a lot more FTL, but you can tell like whether it's because they've thought it through or they've play tested it or whatever. Like there are just all these clever little decisions that go into it that create sort of these aha moments. So it's like, and I'm sure it's crafted. Like I'm sure when they created these squads, sometimes they put things in there that probably are truly pointless, but a lot of times it's like you look at an ability like, oh, I freeze a monster, I freeze a Vec and myself. Like, how is that useful? And then you're like, oh, well, I can set on top of this emergence point and freeze a Vec, and like the emerging Vec will break me out. Like you just have those little aha moments that kind of like help you play the squads.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you don't. Unless you're playing Blitzkrieg or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm about to lightning bolt 3 of my cities because this mech is terrible.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and those aha moments are like what kept me playing so long, because it felt like for the longest time, it just felt like an endless string of those kind of moments.
Right.
Yeah, so it was definitely, I think once I got past that first squad, because I think I did almost bounce off, but then I played the RST, the Frozen Titans, and the Flame Behemoths, which are all a lot of fun to play.
Right.
And they all play pretty differently.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you've been playing around?
That's it for me.
All right.
Unless you want to talk about Frostpunk on hard.
No, we will not talk about Frostpunk on hard. We're gonna go ahead and start to wrap this one up. I guess for me, I'm going to finish out Dragon Ball Z and then not know what to do with the rest of my life. That's probably what I'm going to do for the next couple of weeks. Nate, what about you? What are you planning on picking up and playing here in the next week or two?
Definitely finishing off Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I don't know about after that, though.
Okay. Will, what about you? You got any games that you're looking forward to playing?
Well, probably going to continue on with my big old, play with other people list. So
yeah,
Soulcalibur VI, maybe some more For the King, Super Mega Baseball 2, Overcooked 2, and probably something single player. I'm just not sure exactly what.
All right. Mr. Flex, what about you?
I'm playing Return of the Obra Dinn, as we talked about. I'll keep going with that. I keep getting pulled back into my Castlevania hole. I think at this point I'm just going to have to commit and play all the 2D Castlevanias I haven't played. So
yeah. Go for it.
After finishing off another run of Bloodstained, I picked up Castlevania 3 again. So slowly going to work my way through that.
All right.
I ordered a copy of Portrait of Ruin. So got plenty of Castlevania to play.
That's pretty great.
And I also just bought and downloaded and installed Valkyria Chronicles 4. So
nice.
All right.
That's going to be started soon as well.
Decided to pull the trigger. Well, it'll be good to have some Valkyria Chronicles representation on the podcast, I guess.
There we go. Mr. Ryan, what about you? What have you got coming up here in the next couple of weeks?
I just started a game called Kiro Blaster. And I'll probably play, I don't think it's super long. It's by the guy who, if I'm not mistaken, it's by the guy who made Cave Story.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm not really sure.
All right. Well, I think that's probably going to just about do it for us.
I think it's pretty amazing that we are doing a podcast on October 27th, 2018, and nobody mentioned the words Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, the indie charm of the
the
ATACS podcast. Yeah.
Why would we play Red Dead Redemption 2 when we can be playing stuff like Return of the Obra Dinn or Into the Breach or For the King.
Oh, I mean, I agree. I just think it's kind of hilarious.
Or God awful. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. We only play the most esteemed games here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, quick survey. Does anyone here does anyone here expect that they will play Red Dead Redemption 2 at some point?
Eventually.
Probably not.
So probably just will.
I'd like to say yes, but that's a big time commitment, and I'm not really feeling ready.
Yeah, I've heard that's like a
yet.
100-hour game.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Buckle up.
A lot of horses. So, I don't know. But anyway. All right. Well, eventually we'll talk about Red Dead Redemption 2, probably in the early part of 2019. So it probably will be omitted from our Game of the Year discussions, which are coming up sooner rather than later, actually. We're pretty close to the end of the year. So, anyway, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us here. You've been listening to Adults Talk About Cool Stuff. This has been ATACS episode number 48, just a couple of days before Halloween. So happy Halloween, you guys, and we will see you back in your feeds in about 2 weeks, where we're going to talk about some more video games and potentially some other things. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.